Hi, friends, and thank you for tuning in to the Still Podcast Author Series. My name is Heather Still, and this podcast is to get to know successful indie writers, their books, and their writing process. Thank you for joining us. If you like what you hear and what you see, please follow us, subscribe, follow the links, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And tune in next time. So, hello, and thank you for joining the Still Podcast Author Series. With me today is author Angela M. Herrick. Angela, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yes, I know I've started reading two of your books.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit about Angela, the writer?
Sure. I've been writing for professionally about 5 years. I started as a playwright because I have a theater background
Mhm.
and decided to challenge myself that fall with NaNoWriMo, the National Write a Novel in a Month. And I was going to be a NaNoWriMo. I was going to do a memoir. And halfway through, I just had this idea for a time travel romance, and there was nothing like it out there. And I really wanted to read it. So I wrote it for myself, and it got popular from there, and I've been writing books ever since.
Awesome. And I see you have your winter shirt on.
Yes, yes, I
Yes,
do.
I did one of the podcasts with my winter shirt on, and I didn't get tall enough, and now I'm like, oh, we could have been twins. I don't know where it
I
is.
know. I've been trying to scoot up, but my chair's really comfy.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on winning. I mean,
Thank you.
50,000 words in a month, especially with the Vegas, 20 Books Vegas conference.
That actually made it easier for me because I come from the Eastern time zone. So I would get up early Vegas time and I would write before I would go to the conference.
Oh, nice.
My own time travel trick.
Right. I took a couple pictures of me typing in the airport. I got to the airport like 3 hours early. So I'm like, oh, I'm a real writer now. I'm all typing away.
I did that too. I got that email. You better be there 3 hours beforehand.
Right. Excellent. So you were playwright before, and now you're writing and publishing your stories. What kind of stories do you write?
Right now, it's primarily time travel, science fiction, science fantasy type time travel stories. The two that are published so far are Devil's Chord,
Mhm.
which is book one in my time travel series. Devil's Dissonance, book two, will be out next month.
Okay.
And my Nano project this year was the third and final installment
Okay.
of the Devil's Chord series.
Awesome. So I'm reading the Devil's Court series right now. And what excited me was that he time travels to the Harlem Renaissance. And I just happened to teach the Harlem Renaissance in February with my sixth graders. We don't go too into depth, but we learn about the writers, the artists, the musicians. So it's very cool walking around.
Well, thank you. I love that period of time. I was
Mhm.
into old movies in high school, and I just have never lost my love for that. And when this idea came to me, my son was in 11th grade where they really hammer home the Harlem Renaissance. So I took him out for ice cream and I was like, it's been a long time since I was in the 11th grade. Tell me everything. So he's in the acknowledgments because Elijah helped me a lot.
Awesome. And now, is there a romance in the book? Because I'm not there yet. Oh, wait,
Yes.
no, I've met her, the redheaded woman.
Yes,
Yes.
the stage manager,
Rebecca?
Rebecca.
Rebecca. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then I'm curious, do you write, like you writing time travel, so sci-fi,
Mm.
is like the romance kind of like a side plot, or is it more center stage?
I intended for it to be a side plot, but
Okay.
it could not be denied. So it's I've had to call it time travel romance because the relationship really took center stage, and those two characters together were very interesting. So it's been something that I pictured differently when I first started writing, and I've gotten to the point, and a lot of authors say that now, that the characters wanted to do something else.
Right. They just listen to their character. Okay.
I do that.
And then so I downloaded Project Mulligan by
Mhm.
accident, thinking I was downloading the time travel one, Devil's Court, instead. And I thought it was a really interesting take on that. Did you want to talk about Project Mulligan?
Sure. So Project Mulligan was my second published novel, and it's a time travel thriller. And the question there is, if you could take an elixir that would transport your consciousness back to any point in the past, into your body at that point, would you do it? And what would you do? The lead character, Sarah Breckton, has had a tragedy happen with her son,
Mhm.
and um, somebody who she knows and thinks she trusts comes to her, and he's a doctor who invents pharmaceuticals, and he has worked on this elixir, and he is pretty insistent that she go back and fix what happened with her son because it
Mhm.
affected his family as well.
Right. And I don't think it's giving anything away by saying, because it pretty much happens at the very beginning. But what I
Mhm.
thought was really interesting was your Sarah, you're the main protagonist is in her son goes a little bonker. There's something going on, and he shoots and kills people and himself. And so, I've read some of those like school shooters written by students of mine, right? Because it's very much on the top of our heads. And it was really interesting that you took the perspective of the parent and everything that that parent had to go through and how devastating that was. And I've never, I thought that was a really interesting take on it.
Thank you. I have a child that went through some brain health issues, and luckily we had a much happier ending. But there were times when I would go to this place, especially when we couldn't get the help that he needed, where I thought,
Hmm.
is this going to be us in a decade? And thankfully it wasn't. And we did have something that turned the situation around that I was very grateful for. But it was 2020. We were all in a dark place. And I thought, well, what if this had not worked out? And I was a social worker and before I became a mother. And so we're trained on how to find resources for people. I couldn't find resources for my son. And it was really heartbreaking. And I kept thinking, what about someone who doesn't have a mental health background? And I also researched my my first child came home the day that Columbine happened. So I was holding a brand new baby watching this unfold live on TV. And so that has always stuck with me. And I found out that Dylan Klebold's mother wrote a book and that she was a mental health counselor and she missed the signs in her child. And just my heart went out to her, and I thank her in the acknowledgments because she really went through like the family fell apart, the marriage didn't survive, and just all the things that she went through. And I thought, okay, this is something where moms do sometimes miss things, but also moms are usually struggling very hard to help their children.
Right. We want to do it all. There's only so much we can
Absolutely.
do. Well, and now I'm trying to pull up. I have that book. I think, is it called Columbine? Oh,
Can't remember what her book is called.
it wasn't written by her. It was definitely written by a man who happened to be there the day it happened. And he spent a good deal of time explaining how devastated I think it must have been Dylan Klebold's
Yes.
parents. Okay, because he was, yeah. I don't want to get too much into it,
Yeah.
but it was just really interesting for you to take that and so that we could get some sympathy for those poor parents who are just at that place. Like, what an awful place.
Yeah. And I felt like it was important to set it in a small town because that kind of culture, it's if you've grown up in a small area, I was living in a small town at the time,
Mhm.
the people grow up together and then they all have children together and those children grow up together. And so I really enjoyed studying the dynamic of these weren't faceless, nameless parents in a big city. These were her friends that
Mm-hmm.
she grew up with, and she was there when their children were born, and they had been there for each other. So I really um, found it an interesting dynamic to study.
Yeah, and I think you did a really good job with the characters.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the families and how they're interacting, and yeah, it was really good. So,
And honestly enjoyed being in my antagonist head. I enjoyed writing for Daniel, which sounds weird probably.
oh, yeah.
I, I'm not the kind of person he is, but I wanted him to have real goals. I don't like just the mustache twirling villain.
Mm-hmm.
It was important to me that he have a voice and he have motivations. We might not agree with them, we may not condone how he behaves, but
Mm-hmm.
spending an afternoon in his head when I would write for him was very intriguing and interesting for me.
Awesome. So, I tell me about a favorite character you've written.
I saw that question.
You know,
Oh,
I
they're
can
like
change it.
my
We can change it.
they're like my children. I don't want to choose.
That's what Ivy Sinclair said just yesterday. Same thing. It's
Oh,
like choosing a favorite child. You can't.
exactly.
So,
I
do you have
like
a
them.
better question for me to ask?
Ah, why are they all my favorite? I thought about it, and it's what makes them relatable. Like I said, Daniel has his reasons, like duty to his family. We all
Mhm.
understand being dedicated to one's family, and Sarah wanting to be the best mom she can. Of course, we all as mothers want that. And I like that Rebecca really she has a really great arc over the three books, and there's a lot of growth, and I'm excited for that. And Jack has this temper, and it's not a dangerous violent temper, just like a shoot off his mouth and it hurts him kind of. And my favorite characters when I was a kid were like Daffy Duck and Donald Duck, because I too would shoot off at the mouth. I couldn't relate to like Mickey Mouse because he was too good.
He was always so happy.
I know. And Donald wanted to be the center of attention, and he had a temper, and I was like, oh, that's me all over. And so I can relate with Jack needing to gain control of his mouth. So yeah, I think the reason I love them is just things that I can see in them that are relatable.
Okay. My mom's favorite character was Donald Duck. She loved Donald Duck. So whenever we were in Disneyland or Disney World and there was Donald, we were getting our picture taken with him. And it's so funny because my mom was just so calm and mellow and didn't lose her temper. It was like the opposites.
I'm better with my mouth now, but I was a really sassy kid.
Yeah. So with Devil's Cord, and you've got the second book coming out next month.
Right.
I don't know how to ask a question without having any spoilers, but I mean, I haven't finished the first book, so is he still in the Harlem Renaissance period at the end, like for the second book? How do I ask a question? I don't know.
Yeah. No, he has a trip to 1940s New Orleans.
Oh, yes. Okay, I've been to New Orleans a lot of times.
I love
That's
New
gonna be
Orleans.
fun. I've only been to New York once and I did not make it to Harlem, so. Mhm.
New Orleans was fun because I'm from Louisiana originally, and I grew
Okay.
up going and visiting New Orleans, so I could see it so much clearer in my head. And I've walked the streets of the French Quarter many times. And when I finished drafting the book, my husband took me to New Orleans as a
Oh,
gift. And I spent
oh.
one whole day telling him about the history of these fake people in my head. And we went to bed that night, and I was like, hey, tomorrow, would you like to hear some history of people who actually lived? He's like, I didn't mind the history of the character because he likes Devil's Court. He's like, I didn't
hmm
mind that. He's like, but yeah, they would be really nice to know some of the actual history tomorrow.
Last time I was in New Orleans was in 2018, and I took my kids for the first time. And there's a couple places we always go. Court of the Sisters, Court of the
Court
Seven
of Two
Sisters,
Sisters.
Court of
It's
Two Sisters, and
yes.
we sat out in the courtyard And I was so proud of my son. One of my sons had the authentic Caesar salad, so it had anchovies, and that was a great
Ooh.
presentation. And my other son had the turtle soup,
Oh
and he liked
wow.
it. He liked the turtle soup. I'm like, yeah. And
I miss the food. And Court of
yes.
Two Sisters is in my book, Devil's Dissonance.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Well, I look forward to reading it.
And
Okay.
I just finished a play because I'm still writing plays called
Okay.
Monologues, The Sisterhood of Motherhood. It's
Mm,
a collection of monologues and short scenes about what it is to be a mom and the commonalities that we have. And some of them are tearjerkers, some of them are funny. And my play is going to be produced here in Orlando Mother's Day weekend.
oh, awesome. Congratulations.
You
That's
took me
fun.
16 years to write it.
A lot of that is you're getting your experience to write it, right?
Exactly, my research.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about if I had finished it back in, gosh, like started like at 07, 08, then it would probably just be about kids 10 and under because that's what I had. And
Mhm.
I hadn't gone on to foster and adopt and have all of those experiences. So I'm really kind of glad it took that long. It needed to.
Right. Good to know. Like I said, I'm just getting so much great advice from doing this series. So I'm just soaking it
I
all
can
in.
imagine. I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward to watching the other episodes to see
Yes.
what nuggets I can get from the other authors.
Right. So for 20 Books Vegas, I'm curious, what were your big takeaways or big highlights?
So I really enjoyed learning about all the different ways there are to market and let people
Hmm.
know about our books. But I felt a little bit like drinking from a fire hose at first. I was so overwhelmed. And then the last day, I was in the session about marketing books in a way you actually love. And that helped me so much because it was telling us about if you like filming videos, then yes, go do TikTok, go do Instagram Reels. If you like being in person with people, do the author signings, plan
Hmm.
events if you like that, and do a book launch. And I usually do a book launch party because I love planning parties. And it was, they were talking about if you love writing, then do a newsletter. And that's one thing that I really want to get on next is having a newsletter because I got into writing because I love writing.
Hmm.
And I kept getting a little annoyed about having to be analytical about ads because that's not who I am. So I will eventually have to do that, I'm sure. But at this point, just starting with my strengths was the best lesson that I got out of the convention.
Okay, excellent. And you said something, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to comment on that." Now I can't remember what it was.
Was
I'm
it
so
one of
sorry.
the different,
That's probably where you lost me. I'm like, I heard that expression before at 20 Books Vegas, and what is that? Drinking from the fire hose.
well, so a fire hose is so powerful and so much water that it just will knock you back physically.
Okay.
And that's how I felt the first couple of days. There was so much information, so much that I didn't know about.
Hmm.
And I was just scribbling notes and taking pictures of slides as fast as I could. And
Okay.
um, I thought, well, this is great, but where do I start? So going into the marketing you'll actually love really helped me figure out where to start.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, I figured out with just this doing that first episode, I don't have a clue about marketing. I do not know what I'm doing. So, it's all a learning process. But I agree about, I liked that, I thought I was going to have to do TikTok videos because, I'm going to be publishing young adult books.
Mm,
So I really appreciate that. Hey, if videos aren't your thing, don't have to focus on them.
so freeing to hear.
You're right. I've got a newsletter. I do like to write. My goal is to not overwhelm my 14 subscribers with a bunch of newsletters.
Well, then I have a question for you. Where do you get subscribers? Because that part is proving tricky.
So I did Jane Friedman's workshop. So Jane Friedman, just big, if you haven't heard of her, just she does a lot of workshops, webinars. I have her book about the business of being a writer, just a fabulous resource. And I attended hers on marketing specifically for the email newsletter. and she recommended three. There's MailChimp, MailerLite, and Substack were the three she recommended. Now, I know there's some others out there, but she gave her reasons. And the reason she was suggesting Substack for the newbies was because on Substack, I thought it was just for writers, but there's a whole bunch of other people on there too. But you can recommend each other.
Ah,
So,
okay.
like, I've got three Substacks I recommend. Only one person's recommending my Substack right now.
Hey.
But I mean, we could all get on Substack and recommend each other.
True.
So I've started there. And I will probably set up a MailerLite one at some point because that seems to be the preferred one. I'm trying to remember what else. There was a couple others thrown out there. I can't remember the others. I know Wix is one, but I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, I used to use MailChimp when I was
Mhm.
doing my drama business, but I've heard that it's kind of falling out of favor right now. And I think
It's some weird charge structure that they're doing.
yeah, that's what I'd heard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I still have a MailChimp, but I never used it. So. But yeah,
Yeah,
so so your marketing, you're going to set up an email newsletter and put it
that's
at the
right.
end of your book.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. Any other marketing, anything you found that works or?
I like doing Facebook. I'm on Facebook anyway, and so it's super easy for me to just go on and post a funny meme or ask a question when I think about it, or take a picture that makes me think of something from writing or one of my books, or I'm an avid reader too.
Hmm.
Um, I usually can read 1 to 3 books in a week, and I usually have something on my phone, so any bit of downtime I'm reading, I'm listening to a book in my car. And so I always have books going. And so finding things out in the wild, like a beautiful library, and taking a picture or a book display or something, and just putting that out there. So yeah, the Facebook has been fun. And if you post consistently, then they do boost your visibility, and authors are really good about following one another, which has been nice for me. I've got almost 400 followers on Facebook now.
Oh, wow. So now, do you like have an author one separate from your personal one and you leave that one open for anyone to join? How does that work?
Yeah, so I have a business page, and
Okay.
it's author Angela M. Herrick.
Okay.
And we're just able to post on each other's post, which is fun because we're all talking about the same thing. We all like writing, we all like
Hmm.
reading for the most part. There are a few authors that say they don't like to read, and I'm a little suspicious of them. I'm like, how did you learn?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of us that I used to read a lot. I used to do the Goodreads 50, 75 books a year. But well, right now I'm trying to read a whole bunch of books. I'm reading all the authors' books that are coming on the podcasts. But it's hard sometimes to find the time. But yeah, I absolutely love reading.
Me too. I
And
have to remind myself that reading is part of the job when you're an author.
Mhm. Absolutely. In fact, Reese Barden, who might be episode 2 or 3, I haven't decided which one yet. Um, she writes paranormal shifter romance, and she was
Ooh.
saying that she's not trained in writing. She's just an avid reader, and her book's pretty fun. So it's pretty cool that she doesn't have any of the writing background. She loves reading. Do you have any advice for new indie authors like myself?
Absolutely. Set aside time every day to write.
Oh,
If and you can't edit a blank page, and writing is why we're doing this. So have that time, guard it, because what I have learned is if I don't put boundaries up during the time I'm supposed to be writing, things will quickly come in and fill it.
okay.
And if you have a day where things just go crazy, and like I had a kiddo with a flat tire, we rode to their rescue, and
Mm,
didn't get to write that day. And I was like, you know what? And during NaNoWriMo, I had the flu. I couldn't write for 2 days. I just dust myself back up, and I'm like, okay, well, those 2 days didn't happen, but I'm going to go right back to it and just keep having that time that I guard. So That's my best advice. So many people are like, "Oh, I want to write." And I'm like, "Well, why haven't you? I can't find the time." I'm like, "You will not find it. You have to make it."
And that is great advice. Thank you. Now, I know I put on there if you wanted to read a bit from your book or show a trailer or something, and I've forgotten to do that with pretty much everyone else. So I don't know if you're prepared, if you have something to share.
I am. I'm trying to think if
Yes.
I hope it's not too spoilery for you because it's from chapter 9 of Devil's Court. I
Ooh, I think I'm at chapter 7.
probably
So
shouldn't then.
no, that's okay. Read it.
Okay. All right. Mrs. Esther lived on the opposite end of the nightclub district on a street with stately old homes that had once been occupied by wealthy Jewish families. Once the black families moved into Harlem, most Jewish families moved out, dividing their homes into rental apartments. Esther's place was different. She was the only black person in 1930s Harlem Jack knew of who owned her own home. Unlike the buildings with absentee landlords, Esther's grown sons maintained the house for her. Her husband, who'd been one of the city's first black doctors, died several years earlier, leaving her the sole owner. The woman was incredibly independent and no nonsense. Jack hated to admit it, but he was more than a bit intimidated by her. Nonetheless, she was fiercely devoted to the women who lived under her roof. If he wanted to take Beck out, he had to go through Mama Esther. "What do you want?" she asked as she swung the door open. "Evening, Miss Esther. I'm here to take Beck to dinner. Didn't she tell you?" "Don't be coy with me, Jack Herman," she said as her eyes narrowed at him. "Excuse me?" "What are your intentions toward my Rebecca?" "To show her a good time," Jack said. Mama Esther slammed the door in Jack's face. I didn't mean that. I just want to have fun and get to know each other," Jack called through the closed door. "Last time I had to work this hard for a date, I was in high school." The door didn't open, but Jack could hear that Mrs. Esther was having a conversation on the other side of the door. "That red devil is after one thing. I know these musician types. Why do you think I married a doctor instead?" "I don't know if I even want to get married, Mama Esther," Beck said. "I'm only 25. I have plenty of time to think about settling down later." "Are you crazy? 25 is entering old maid territory. We got to find you a fella fast." "Well, you could start by letting in the one that's already here to take me to dinner, unless you already scared the man off." "I don't scare that easily," Jack called out from the other side of the door. The door flew open. Mama Esther did not look amused. "No one asked you," she said. He didn't dare make eye contact with her. His eyes drifted behind her. He caught a glimpse of Beck. She was all dolled up for their night on the town. On one side, her wavy red hair was secured with a gold comb, and the wave on the other side framed her face. Her silk green dress clung nicely to her hourglass figure and matched her eyes. "Do you hear me, Jack Herman?" asked Mrs. Esther. "You may take Rebecca to dinner, but that's it. Don't go thinking that if you buy her dinner, that gets you everything else." "Mama Esther, please," Beck pleaded. "I'm telling you, that's all these musicians are after, especially his type." "What's my type?" Jack asked. "You're a confirmed bachelor. How old are you?" Miss Esther asked. "Have you been married before?" "I'm 39, and no, I haven't," he admitted. "Told you he's out for only one thing. He ain't bought no cows because he's getting the milk for free." Now Jack and Beck were both embarrassed. "Mama Esther, as much fun as it is to stay here and be compared to cattle, we need to go," Beck said, brushing past her and Jack. Jack turned to go. Mrs. Esther grabbed his sleeve. "You listen to me, Jack Herman," she whispered furiously. "I found that precious girl scared and hurt in a hospital bed not long ago. She had no family or friends to comfort her. I spent most of my volunteer shifts holding her while she cried. Then I brought that sweet child into my home. She needs somebody, and I'm pretty sure it's not you. Don't you dare hurt her." "I would never," Jack protested. "We'll see," said Mrs. Esther.
Oh, wow. So I read up until the point where she slammed the door in his face. So I read half of that.
Good.
What a fun scene. And oh, you can see how it's setting up a lot of the conflicts because we know he time traveled.
Yes.
We know that this might not end well.
Well,
Okay,
I'm glad
awesome.
I
Well,
didn't give too much away.
no, no. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing and for coming on to the show. Did you have anything else you would like to share?
Um, no, I don't think so. I've told you about the sequel coming out. It'll be coming out mid-January.
Mid-January.
Yes, I wanted
Awesome.
it to come out in Mardi Gras season because I always do a book launch party, and I
That's what
thought,
that's what I wanted to ask you about was the book launch because I heard about your last book launch.
yes.
Take it away. Tell us about
Oh,
the book launch.
well, since Jack visits 1940s New Orleans, I decided that I needed to release the book around Mardi Gras time, and that gave me a great excuse to have a Mardi Gras party here in Florida, which we don't have very many of. And I do something where my husband and I like to practice mixology, like create new cocktails. So we do an official drink for each book. And my plan is to one day have 20 books, of course, and the 21st book will be my drink recipe book. And it'll talk about how each drink relates to each book and have a tiny like summary of the different books. Like for Project Mulligan, I had the elixir and we
Mm.
served it in like little test tubes. And I thought, why did I make the elixir green? I could have made it any color because it was really hard to come up with a green drink. We finally came up with kind of a caramel appletini,
Oh,
which goes down way too smooth. And since it was halfway to Halloween, we told everyone dig your Halloween costumes out. There's some themed costume parties in Project Mulligan. And I was like, okay, everyone, we're gonna do Halloween in April. Just come on over. And then of course for Mardi Gras, everybody will be dressed up in their Mardi Gras finery and mask. And I'm working on the official drink right now. I haven't decided. It's between two different ones. I'm having kind of a hard time
can
deciding.
you share?
It'll either be a king cake shot or the grasshopper, which I found out is a chocolate mint cocktail that was actually created in New Orleans.
Oh, okay. So the king cake shots, for anyone who's not familiar, I know that Mardi Gras, you have that. The king cake is more like this braided bread or something, right?
Yeah, it's almost like a giant cinnamon roll wreath. And then you have the glaze on top, and then they usually do the sprinkles in the Mardi Gras colors, which are green and gold and purple.
And is there a plastic baby involved?
Yes, because it's supposed to be like the baby Jesus, and so one person gets the piece.
You get to find the little plastic baby in the
Yeah,
king cake.
and then the tradition is either I've seen this go both ways. One is if you find the baby, you have to host the next Mardi Gras party
I've heard
next
that one.
year, or that it means good luck. Usually in our house, it's good luck because the kids are the ones finding the baby usually.
Right. Oh, that is so much fun. And I remember you telling me about your previous book launches. So when you said book launch earlier, I was like, oh, I need to ask about that. And that's what totally left my brain. And I'm like,
Oh,
what was it? So I'm so glad you brought it up again because
I
that is
love throwing
so much
parties.
fun. And you're taking pictures of each of them. So your
Mhm.
21st book, you'll have all the pictures and all the themes. I love it.
Yes, and
Awesome.
it's super fun coming up with the drinks too. So
Yeah. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on the Author Series podcast.
oh, I'm honored to be asked. Thank you. I'm so happy to be on your inaugural season.
Thank you for joining us. Feel free to subscribe, like us, rate us. Look forward to seeing you next time.